crisis communication can be a something as simple as a misunderstanding of a quote from a CEO in an article, or a tweet that goes awry, or a Facebook post that people read into too much, or something could be fabricated out of thin air.
The Golding Group Strategic Growth Podcast, formerly known as the Neo Marketing Podcast, offers real-world advice, expert analysis, and smart success strategies for entrepreneurs, investors, decision makers, and business leaders.
Welcome back to the Strategic Growth Podcast. I'm Pritch Pritchard. This is Kyle Golding, and today we're going to talk about 5 additional strategies for crisis communications response.
Very important,
Very
essential,
important.
I would think is the right word for that, and something you need to be obviously prepared for before you ever need it.
You're darn right about that.
Can't wait.
Courtesy of our good friend Jim Lukashevsky, we'll put all the deets in the
certainly
in the notes. But and these are not the end all to be all, but there are a couple of very interesting perspectives. All crisis responses, say Lukashevsky, have these 5 strategies at their foundation.
That makes sense.
Okay. It's easy for me to say.
No, I got it. I got it.
Okay. The first one, and I do like this one, is stop producing victims.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, as long as there are victims, people, animals, living systems, the environment. Places, exactly. As long as they are in the issue, as they are in the scope of the issue, then preparing will continue to expand until you've dealt with the victims.
Right.
And again, in another piece, Lukashevsky says a victim is anybody who thinks he or she is.
Right. Yes. You get to define if you're a victim or not.
You get to define whether or not you're a victim. So the first strategy is stop creating victims.
Yes. Go straight to the source. Start there.
And thanks for that, because the second is manage those victims.
Yes. And it could sound a little cold to say manage the victims, as if you're not trying to manipulate them, you're not trying to mitigate them or push them to the side. You're trying to make sure that they are addressed.
Absolutely.
Right.
And addressing them is the key part.
Yes.
That
is
victims. The strategy.
Yes.
Right. As quickly as possible, put into place a response that you can then, and it doesn't have to be extensive, but a response so that you can then give that to the victims.
But it does have to be authentic.
Absolutely. And help them to manage what they're experiencing.
Yes.
That's the idea behind that particular kind. They need immediate help. I mean, there's going to be responsibility and a search for blame and all of that stuff.
That'll happen.
But the second strategy is to get information to those folks to help them in this event.
Yes. Start by those most affected, work your way out from there.
And I like this third strategy because I've thought about it a lot and talked to a number of professionals, and it never seems to come up as one of the things that we should focus on, and that is to communicate internally with great promptness.
Yes.
And this is, Lukashevsky says, talk to them first before external. Give them a short script. He recommends 300 words, which is about 2 minutes. Most people can remember at least the substance of 2 minutes worth of script. And issue them, as he calls it, with the velocity equal to the issue surfacing. So continually providing information to your internal audience, because as we all know, they've been talking over the back fence with neighbors and others for a long time.
And other people are going to come to them, whether intentionally sidestepping the official discussion or not. It's going to happen.
Right.
And the more that you have a specific, clear message through the process, the better we can get to the truth and to the settling of the issue.
And if you're not giving them information, they're just going to make stuff up.
That's right. They're human beings. That's what happens.
Human beings, absolutely. And people look to them for what's going on.
Right.
What's
what's
almost
happening, what's going on.
As a more official source.
Yes, because they may feel like the official source is trying to protect themselves or speak in legalese and all the things that come with being an official channel.
Yep.
And that's where the dilution, that's where the confusion, that's where the rumors come from, or when people say something even slightly or very different than the official channel, and then that's where you get the mistrust of the official declaration, right?
Absolutely. And indeed, somebody just like you and me for many years has been the most trusted source, according to the Edelman Trust Barometer. And the other hidden reason for communicating internally first is that it obviates any kind of internal disruption, internal disturbances, internal angst, right?
It goes, I think, even further than that, can kind of rally the internal
Absolutely.
group, employees, stakeholders, everyone involved, to working on the solution as a well-oiled machine, if you will, is if everyone working to create the right solution, the right outcome, as opposed to multiple people, maybe they think they're doing the right thing or they think they're helping or not.
Right.
It could detract again. So the more that everyone gets on board, that they buy in and they understand why they're doing what they're doing, the more likelihood you can get to that outcome, address the victims, and then start working towards what I'm sure is going to come next is how you move forward from the initial item onto what the outcomes can be.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, I think it's really important because as we've seen lately, the workplace has begun to become more politicized, and employees calling out and actually getting people fired and canceled. I mean, so letting them know what's going on helps you to prevent an internal crisis from adding to your external crisis.
Especially if those crises are fueled by misinformation or just random things that don't have any truth to the matter.
Right. Somebody just an adversary coming up with a false statement attributable to you. I mean, there's all kinds of things. So yeah, I really like that strategy.
I recently read an article, sidebar here, about usually large corporations. They're targets often, because they have funds and they have things of that nature. But things that we're seeing now, deep fake videos and things of this nature. Right. But faked social media posts, deep fake videos, etc., that is creating controversy for a brand or for a business that the brand or business had zero to do with.
Nothing to do with it.
They find themselves having to backpedal and apologize and be a part of this process, manage a crisis that was 100% fabricated outside of sometimes a competitor, sometimes just teenagers who think they're being funny for whatever reason, right? Like, what happens here when I do this? Yeah. And so because of the rise in that technology, the same thing where you need these protocols in order to understand how to address a legitimate crisis for your brand and for your business. Right. You may have to address an illegitimate crisis that actually doesn't affect you, but you still have to go through this process because it's out in the public. Yep. And there's a certain amount of public who's always going to believe everything.
Absolutely.
And a certain amount of public who's going to do a good job of taking whatever follow-up information you give them and combat it. But it's easy to think about, how do we manage something that maybe we are involved in, whether we made a mistake or something happened or something around us. Right. Then to how you plan for something that is random and complete fiction is a whole nother level of preparedness.
We talked a little bit about how businesses can handle disinformation, and I almost came back to that for this session. We'll go into that in more
I think
depth
as we move forward in the world, that's going to continue to be a subject matter. I mean, obviously, the term fake news is in the lexicon now, where people are using it on a regular basis, and disinformation. Recently the federal government was going to appoint a disinformation panel. As quickly as that came, it went.
One letter off.
Oh yeah,
from the KGB.
We would have had a whole series of podcasts about that if it had been a real thing.
If it had been a real thing.
That has gone away.
Or if it ever comes back.
That's right. Thank goodness, because this is not 1984. We're past that in the world. But not just government, not just public issues, but anything that has to do with business, anything that has to do with communication. There's always a potential for there to be a problem, and there are right ways to handle it and wrong ways to handle it. And these are the types of things that you need to put into the right way and to get your mindset and preparation for it, because you don't know what's coming.
And it may not even be intentional. It may just be a journalist who misinterpreted you gave them. But there's some bad actors out there. There is evil in the world.
There are folks who are intentionally trying to harm people, or people who just like to create chaos. And then there are people who make honest mistakes, and then there are people maybe sloppy work or something of that nature. And then you get into situations where you have failed at something and you do need to address it.
Yep.
And that is, as much as this communication process we're talking about today, there's a ton of internal processes you need to make within your business in order for that mistake to never happen again.
That's exactly right. And to your sidebar, I do think that we'll come back and visit what businesses need.
We'll
to
continually
do
talk about this probably forever.
Yeah, I think, well, at least the foreseeable future.
I think so.
Sure.
It's not going away.
I don't think so. His fourth strategy is to contact those indirectly affected. So we're talking vendors, we're talking suppliers, partners, collaborators, colleague companies, component manufacturers, people who have a problem now only because you have a problem.
And I would go a little bit further and go brand ambassadors,
yes.
People who are huge proponents of your brand, whether it's in person, on social media, they've given you referrals, they've maybe even given you a 5-star rating on Yelp or Google review or something of that nature. If they're very invested, if they put their reputation on the line for you, then you need to consider them as a part of that list as well.
Absolutely. And as Lukashevsky points out, they're just sitting there and all of a sudden they have a problem because you have a problem, right? So providing them with a script and his experience and my experience, it actually helps them surprisingly say very little, which is the best.
Sometimes the best
worlds.
thing, yes.
Absolutely. And if they do say something, they're more likely to follow the script. So just as you're communicating internally.
Succinct to the point and the information that's most important.
And I would go further to say the same information that you provide your employees, you can provide to these folks that are indirectly affected.
Absolutely.
And the last one is manage the self-appointed, self-anointed.
Ooh, I love this conversation because this happens. And these types of individuals, you could see for those of you watching the video, you can see the ire rolling up in my face.
Yeah.
They really feel like they're doing some good or their intentions are great and they cause more trouble than it's worth. And then as the communication professional, as you try to manage the situation, they actually become angry and upset that you're trying to manage the situation that you're paid to do and that you bring expertise to. I've obviously dealt with this many times in my professional career. This one drives me insane. So let's talk about what to do and not to do. And I might tell a story. I might decide to keep that to myself. But I could tell you that amazingly, people who are just trying to help are some of the worst causes of pain in these situations.
Absolutely. And I love his turn of phrase. He talks about this is including the legacy news media and new media, of course. But then he also talks about the bloggers, the bloviators, the bellyachers, and the backbench bitchers. I love that.
You could just say Twitter.
Well, right. Exactly. Exactly. But so these folks, some folks have got their scanners on listening to the police radio. Some folks have just got their antenna up. Here's an opportunity for me to insert myself and make a name. It doesn't matter. And he's saying it doesn't really matter about their quote unquote official legitimacy. Provide them with the same information. And you would think that is a little counterintuitive. The backbench bitchers, for example, why should I provide information to them? Well, you might convert some of them. At the very least, you're defending yourself.
But you're not going to convert all of them.
No, you're not.
You do need to understand that there are people in this world whose joy in life is to be argumentative, to not ever to ever come to the other side of the argument.
Absolutely.
They love to fight. They love to be contrarian.
Yep.
They love to stir up trolls.
Absolutely.
And so I'm glad this is number 5. This is the last in the efforts because this should be the least amount of effort and the last thing you do in this process. And you do it one time.
One time. That's right.
There's no back and forth because the back and forth is just a discussion that they want to try to hurt your argument. Provide information, move on. You can't make everyone happy. You don't need to make everyone happy. Don't get sucked up in got to get everyone on my side on this. There's a group of people who will never, ever come to your side. Right. Even if your argument is that the sky is blue and water is wet, there will be people who will counter that and fight you to the death over it on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook, or somewhere else in some other forum. I'm sure Reddit's really bad about this as well. Not picking on you guys, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
it's ROI, right? It's
right.
return on investment. How much time, money, effort are you putting into those people who not only can't ever be convinced, actually find it very funny that whatever argument you make, they can make a counter to.
Right,
so
exactly.
just move on.
But it's all part of, as Lukashevsky points out, it's part of your initial strategy of scripting for various audiences.
That makes sense.
And constituencies from the beginning. But you're right. You shouldn't spend a lot of time on them, but you should engage them because there's a chance you might convert a small percentage.
A small percentage, I think.
But at the very least, you're defending yourself, which is really important because everybody knows a bully backs down when you confront them.
And something else you'll see
most of the time
on these online forums again, right, is, why wouldn't they make a statement? Why did they hire a lawyer? Why did they have the PR person? Like, everyone tries to find excuses to why this equates to your guilt or in some situation, which there's no logic to it, but people try to make that argument.
Absolutely.
So, yes, do meet some minimums.
Right.
Yes, we've made statements. We've done these things. We've reached out. We've tried to answer questions. Only so far.
Only so far. And back to what you were saying, not just the backbench bitchers, but the Germans have a term for it, Schadenfreude, which is to take pleasure in somebody else's demise.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people out there today.
That's the internet.
That is the internet. The cesspool that is social media today. Anyway, so 5 additional strategies that I think we should consider. For me, out of the 5, the most important is communicating with your internal audience and putting them first.
Yes.
Not as an afterthought, because you don't want them to find out about what's going on in the media.
You need to come together on these situations and again, trying to address the needs of the victims, try to allay the situation, provide as much information as possible, as necessary as needed.
Yes.
Not everything, just what's needed. It's quick, concise, again, straight to the point. Focus on the victims, focus on the situation itself, and then finally your follow-up is how the situation is corrected and then attempted to be avoided in the future. If you're focusing on those things and keeping it simple, you're doing things in the right way.
Absolutely.
And these are the steps of doing that.
I absolutely agree. These are additional strategies that we should consider. And as we're responding, we also need to pay attention to statements telling folks what we're doing to make sure that this doesn't happen again.
Yes,
I think that's a really important part of that. Those statements,
any sort of acknowledgement, any sort of addressing victims, any sort of something that could be construed as an apology or an acceptance of blame if you are in fact wrong in the situation, will ring hollow if you stop there.
Right.
Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah.
Not good enough.
Not going to do it.
Not good enough.
Just like our thoughts and prayers, right? You got to do better than that.
It's fine, and it's a starting place. And if you're not involved, thoughts and prayers are fine when you're 3,000 miles away and you're not involved in any way in the situation that's going on. Thoughts and prayers. I hope the human beings, the victims, can be consoled and come out whole out of these situations. You're involved. If you're the center of the firestorm, that is not nearly enough.
No,
sure,
that's not
your condolences is fine. In sentence 1, you now have many paragraphs to follow up on that. Exactly what has happened, what can be done, addressing the victims, all of those things in those order, putting the human beings first, putting the situation, all types of victims, places, buildings, communities, etc., and then getting into what can be done, how can it be fixed, and how can we make sure that this doesn't happen again.
Yeah, absolutely. So there you go. I think we'll wade in an upcoming issue on this file. Following this information.
I think it's a great thread to keep running with.
Absolutely. Yes. So, but there you go. That's crisis communication strategies for thought today.
Always be prepared.
Continually
be learning, working with your team. It's like insurance, right? You buy health insurance, you buy car insurance, you buy insurance for your building.
And
you hope to never need
it. To use it.
You hope to never need it, but when you need it, it's there.
It's sure helpful.
Thank goodness. Your preparation, your protocols, your training, your communication processes, just drilling, having conversations, regular updates, all of that will prepare you And we talk about crisis communication, right? And people think immediately something huge.
Right.
A crime has happened.
Right.
It's something massive, a scandal.
Right.
But crisis communication can be something as simple as a misunderstanding of a quote from a CEO in an article, or
right.
a tweet that goes awry,
right.
or a Facebook post that people read into too much, or something could be fabricated out of thin air.
Or not even that nefarious. Just, I mean, look at the supply chain issues we have.
Yeah.
Right?
Just complaining customers, right?
Yeah, I can't get this to you for another 3 months because I don't have the parts.
Right.
Well, what the heck good are you?
So just like insurance, your response plans, your crisis management, the same way you have fire drills. Protocols.
Yep.
Did I say plan?
Yes.
So a wrong P word.
Shame on you.
Your plan, your protocols and training.
Yeah.
Your protocols don't mean anything if you don't train.
That's exactly
Reiterate, commit, communicate.
Yep.
And protocols empower everyone in the process to do their part. But it's the same thing. You do fire drills. You do natural disaster drills. Some places do active shooter drills now, right? You got to drill. You got to work on these things. You have to be prepared. You have to have your protocols in place. And everyone needs to understand their role long before the crisis, whether it's something simple like unhappy customers or an actual scandal or crime.
Right.
Anything in between, it doesn't count if the day it's happening, you start working on this.
Well,
you got to start now.
I'm afraid there are still a lot of CEOs or senior leaders who think, this isn't going to happen to me, and so they forego that, and they're mistaken.
That's why I like the insurance analogy.
Yeah.
No one buys insurance with, we'll probably set the building on fire.
Right, exactly.
No one thinks that way, but when the building's on fire, you are very relieved you have that insurance.
Absolutely.
It's a part of doing business.
Absolutely.
It's a price of doing business.
Absolutely. So there you go. That's what we have for you today. Subscribe, like, send us your comments because that's how we grow. And until next time, ciao.
Good luck.
Thanks for listening to the Golding Group Strategic Growth Podcast. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Tell a friend, leave a review, and engage with us on social media. To contact us, please visit thegoldinggroup.com.